Okay, let's think about this one now. So, if a child is unwanted, pro-choicers are saying that the child is better off being killed. So, as I comment around on different, you know, different things for pro-choice, pro-life, is that what we really believe? That a child is better off dead than unwanted? You know, if the mother doesn't want the child, that's the mother's fault. It really is. I mean, the mother's the one with the problem. So it doesn't mean that you should kill your child. You know, because a lot of times feelings change for women. They may have had a difficult labor, or they may have not been really mature. But I find most of the time that even if a mother wasn't a good mother, she's happy in the end that she had her kids. So, for example, we've also got the case of someone saying recently 93% of children brought up on welfare go to drugs and they are homeless and they have a lot of problems. So basically, I said, so let's kill the kid instead. I mean, really, this rhetoric is ridiculous. It makes no sense to say these are the reasons to kill a child. So, for example, my grandmother from the project, she had 10 kids. She was an awful mother, awful. I could go on and on about how she ran around with a bunch of men, how we don't even know for sure which kid is which. I mean, some of them, most of them were my grandfathers, but there's a few people have questioned. Awful mother. She didn't want it. She didn't want her kids. She wanted to be a very selfish woman and do what she wanted. So in the end, though, she was glad to have her kids. In the end, she grew up, she matured, she, you know, obviously got old, so she couldn't do what she used to do. So that's no excuse. I mean, my uncle was one of the best things that had happened to me. And they were brought up in the projects, and my uncle, my favorite uncle, chose not to do drugs. He just saw it and he didn't want it. And that's with a mother who was on welfare all her life, moving from one place to another constantly. He chose not to do it. I have another uncle who chose to. But you can't blame the projects. You can't blame welfare. It's a choice that people make. Most of her kids stayed out of trouble with big, you know, big time trouble with drugs. So that is not, you know, true. And the other thing I was going to say was the argument, if a mother doesn't want her kid, doesn't hold true either, because again, my grandmother didn't want her kids. So does that mean that someone in my family should not have lived? Does that mean her grandkids should have never lived? Does that mean I should have never been here? Because she didn't want her kids. She did want her grandkids. I mean, she spoiled me. So even though if she didn't want her kids, she was more than happy once she mellowed out to be a grandmother. And she was very happy to have me as her granddaughter and very proud of me as her granddaughter. So that claim that if a kid's not wanted, that doesn't do it. And there's just no reason. I mean, basically, these people make up these stories that say, you know, these kids are in foster care or something. So the poor kid, they're suffering or whatever. But kids tend to have a big bubble around them, and they tend to be able to be pretty resilient. And to say, it's better off to kill them instead of letting them suffer, I mean, we have no right to say that, because you never know what type of person that person's going to come out to be like. You never know how they're going to turn out. There are so many in and outs of that type of thinking, intricacies that you do not understand. So there's no way to say that person shouldn't have lived, because I've seen people from the worst of the worst, and I've seen many people turn out well. because they had a hard life. Not in spite of it, but because they had a hard life. They made something out of themselves and they wanted something. And I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of people come from the worst of the worst, and they're better people than the people who come from money and who are wealthy. There's a lot of good people out there who were raised with nothing and they have good hearts. So that is not justifiable at all.